Hello guys, welcome here to another edition of Out of Turn 4. I'm hoping to make this one quick because I'm recording at 2 in the morning and I need to get to bed because I got a long work day ahead. So, coming up, of course, we're going to talk Barber, we're going to talk Dover, we're going to talk Denny Hamlin's new idea to bring viewership to the NASCAR Cup Series. We're also going to talk the Alex Bowman injury, a potential new driver in the Cup Series starting next season. And then, of course, we'll make our predictions for the race weekend at Kansas. But we begin with the IndyCar race. We're going to start with Barber. Scott McLaughlin, he passes Romain Grosjean late to win. Of course, it's his first win of the year. But, man, Romain, once again, another runner-up finish. He's been looking to end a well over 10-year winless streak. And I'm not going to lie, I was rooting for him at the end. I was like, man, he's screwed himself out so many times that I just can't picture that he's going to keep doing this. And just as I think that, we find out, man, he has no push to pass. He's got Scott McLaughlin right behind him with like 82 seconds. And McLaughlin just powered by him. Nothing that Grosjean could have done. But it was a good race. It was a good, clean race between those two. Of course, we know Romain has a history of aggressive driving. So, overall, good race. Good win for young Scotty Mac. And big momentum boost going into, well, actually, we're into now the month of May. So, of course, we are excited here on Out of Turn 4. It is the best month in auto racing that you will ever see. Of course, you've got the Indy 500 and the build up to it, and then you've got the Coca-Cola 600. And for those who care about Formula 1, you've got Monaco. So, you got all that coming up this month, so it'll be interesting. It'll be a fun month, and we can't wait to have it all covered for you here on Out of Turn 4 starting next week when we predict and get you ready for the Indy GP. So, Ryan Truex, man, I didn't think we'd be talking about him today, but he finally gets his first career NASCAR National Series victory. Of course, winning in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Dover. Just remarkable. I mean, I'm happy for him, don't get me wrong. He's had this win coming for a long time, of course. He should have won a few years ago at Dover when he drove for Joe Gibbs back in the early 2010s. It's just a career that has just had so many twists and turns and uncertainties. But somehow he stayed in the sport, and he's gotten rewarded for his perseverance, and, just remarkable. I'm not a fan of him after Martinsville, but Ryan did a good job. He ran a good race. One guy who didn't, unfortunately, is Corey Heim, of course. Him and Parker Kligerman get together in the middle of the race, and Kligerman kind of gave him the "you're number one." So, oh boy, what can I say about this? So Corey Heim comes out of the corner, tries to battle with Parker Kligerman there. Doesn't let up on the inside and ends up tagging him in the right rear, I believe, or the left rear, and just sends him around, into the wall. There's, if you're spinning at Dover, you're going into the wall. You're going into one wall. There's a guarantee right there. And unfortunately, for Parker Kligerman, his day comes to an end off of it. And Parker again showed his displeasure. And I've been high on Corey Heim. He was in my top manufacturer. He was one of my top drivers for Toyota that I thought could make a big leap. If you recall a couple weeks ago, and I said, who's the best in every manufacturer category? And I said, I believe he was number 2 or 3 for Toyota. So, and I'm high on him. I think he's going to be successful in the Xfinity Series, but that was a dumb mistake for a guy who's working his way to the top. And Parker has a right to be upset. I mean, but again, it's Corey Heim's first race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. There's a lot he's having to learn with limited practice time, with, trying to get acclimated in general. He's got so much he's had to learn over the coming weeks. It's difficult. I'm not going to say it's easy. So, and I totally get where Parker Kligerman, and again, he has a right to be upset. He got wrecked, but at the same time, this is the guy making his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut. I hope he spent a lot of time in the simulator before and after Corey Heim, but, just unfortunate. Just an unfortunate situation where I feel like, there's no denying the intent. There's no denying that he did that. Did he mean to do it? I'm not going to get into that too much. I will say personally, from my view, it didn't look like he wanted to do that. But I feel like he's still trying to test the limits of a NASCAR Xfinity Series car and just went too far. But on the Cup side, man, it's a Truex weekend sweep. The 13th time in NASCAR history that this has ever happened, where brothers sweep the weekend. And Martin Truex Jr., he ends his long winless streak this weekend at Dover. It's his third win there, his 32nd career win. It's also ending a 54-race winless streak that dates back to Richmond in the playoffs in 2021. So I don't want to talk too much about the race. I was working during the rain-delayed race. And just so people know, before I get into what happened in that race, if we ever do have a rain-delayed race, I don't postpone this show. This show still comes out at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Now, if the Indy 500 gets moved, which God willing it doesn't, or God hoping it doesn't, but let's just say it did, that would probably delay us. But if the Cup race didn't get off today, we were recording regardless. It just would have been centered around the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the NTT IndyCar Series, as opposed to, off of the Cup race, and just we would have to skip the Cup race for the weekend, unfortunately. So because we want to remain consistent here, we will always have the show Tuesday at 5 now. If it was a big event, we'll reconsider. But considering this is Dover, I'm just not going to focus on it too much. But I do want to focus on this. Ross Chastain is adding to his hit list. And you can now add Brennan Poole to the incident list, as well as Kyle Larson. So Ross Chastain entered the corner. I don't know if he just got frustrated with Poole, who was a couple laps down. I believe that's what he was, but he ran right into the back of Brennan Poole. There's no denying. It's just, to me, it was like Denny Hamlin and J.J. Yaley a few weeks prior, where Denny just ran over J.J. Yaley. And I'm sorry, he can defend it on his podcast saying, hey, I didn't know he'd slow up that much. Like, dude, you wrecked him. You wrecked him. It's that simple. You're just beating around the bush so you don't get a race manipulation penalty. And same here, unfortunately, Ross wrecked him. And I'm a Ross Chastain fan, for those who are new to the show. I've loved Ross. I've loved watching him come up through the ranks, and I still root for him today. And I'm a Ross Chastain and I'm a Chase Elliott fan. And just the way, and of course, for those who don't know, I've met Ross Chastain a couple times. He's a very nice guy, very good with the fans. So anybody going to the races who wants to meet a driver, that's the driver you want to meet. So, what I will say is I'm not going to defend him. He did it. Yeah, Poole and Larson have a right to be upset. And Poole, of course, went right to the media after, explained what happened. Basically said, Ross deserves a butt whooping. And unfortunately, I'd have to agree with that assessment. As much as I'm a fan of the guy, I think at this point, the apologies, whether it's fake, whether it's real, I'm not going to get into that either because I'm not a psychologist. I can't tell you. But I could tell you, if this is a regular occurrence, at least from my experience, is if, to me, you could apologize once or twice. And, okay, first time, yeah, it was a mistake. We'll move past it. Second time, it's, oh, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Okay, now it's in the back of my mind of, is it really a mistake, or is he just doing this to save his image? And then finally, now it's just, he's, I guess in my mind, I'd be like, after that third incident, it's, he's just trying to save his image. That's what I think the conclusion would be drawn to, and I think that's the conclusion in the garage area, is that he's just trying to save his ass by apologizing, and all that. So I think, the time for apologies has ultimately come to an end. I think at this point, the drivers are just going to take this matter into their hands. And I have to agree with Brennan Poole. I think, he's going to need a butt whooping. I think, someone's just going to have to, next time an incident like this happens, someone's just going to have to meet him on pit road after the race and, just right across the face the second the helmet comes off. I think that's just the only way he's going to learn. I think, and I don't want him to get beat up. I want him to take this and learn from it, and hopefully we don't have another incident. But I'm saying if we do in the future, unfortunately, I think Brennan Poole has a point. Maybe if he does take a hit to the face, he'll finally learn, hey, and again, I don't wish for a driver to get hurt. I don't wish for that. It's great entertainment, but, I think that's about the only way. If you want him to learn, that might be the only way. So, as far as Larson goes, and I will tell you personally, I respected Larson. I respect him as a champion. But it feels like since that championship, it feels like that ego has just gone to his head. I just see him now as some egotistical crybaby. Is just what it's become. I just don't know what happened. That first year back, it was great. He was dominant. He deserved to win the title. And, I'm like, man, that's good for him. And looking back at 2021, you got to keep in mind what he did. He did it clear as day. Okay, he did what he did clear as day. And, I think 2021, he was grateful to be back, because let's face it, not many people come back from what he came back from. So to be given this second chance to go and win a championship in that second chance and essentially redeem yourself, revive your career, is remarkable. But I don't know what shifted between 2021 and 2022 and now 2022 and 2023. But it seems like he doesn't know who's on his outside ever. And he runs that guy out to the wall. I don't know if it's out of frustration or he just doesn't know they're there. But, And he has a right to be mad at Ross. I can't stress that enough. He has a right to be mad. Ross ruined his day. But it's just constantly. I mean, and it's like when he gets a driver, it's never his fault. That's what I noticed. But the second he's touched, it's, he's got to go out there and make a statement, whether it's block the guy intentionally or he's got to drive down into the door and hope to end that guy's day like he did with Ryan Preece. I just, this is why I'm losing respect for him. I already lost respect for him for what he said. But, back in 2020 during the lockdown. But now I've just lost even more respect for him. Just the way he's conducted himself the last few years in a separate incident. But I just don't like Larson anymore, to be honest. So it's, but blocking, like I said, there's a way to get back at Ross. And that's, first off, talk about it with him. I'm sure he's just going to give you the same apology, but get him back next race when you're actually both racing for something. You were, like 80, 100 laps down? I don't know. I haven't seen the telemetry from where that stands, but Ross was in a position to win the race. And I'd be saying the same thing about Chase when it happened between him and Harvick 2 years ago. Just petty is the word to best describe that incident. That was petty on so many levels. Just blocking like a child. And keep in mind, Denny Hamlin got a penalty earlier this year for race manipulation at Phoenix for getting back at Ross and dragging him to the back. And not only that, but for admitting it. Okay? This, clear as day, is race manipulation. And NASCAR needs to step in now. Again, let the drivers police themselves, but I wouldn't be shocked if NASCAR steps in here and says, Kyle, you can't do that. You are 100 laps down. You are out of this race, and you essentially handed a race to Truex. Now, again, he could have beaten Truex. Truex could have beaten him on his own. He didn't necessarily need Kyle Larson to do it, but I don't know. I just want to see that happen. So that way, I want to see a race manipulation penalty come out of this. So these drivers know you can't get them back this way. You can wreck them and not admit to purposely doing it, as long as you make it look like an accident. But you cannot block 100 laps down. You had no business being on the track at that point. I'm sorry, but Kyle Larson had no business being on the track. Okay, none. That's my view of it. He had no reason to be out there. He's just sitting out there turning laps. It looked like Jeff Gordon at Phoenix, the year that he wrecked Boyer. That's what it looked like to me. He was just riding around looking for any way to get Ross back. And that's just a point where you're just like, get off the track. Get him back next week. This could have waited a week. But hey, and I guess in the words of Kyle Larson, it happened hours ago. I would have thought he'd have the chance to get over it, figured he could be a grown adult and just get the fuck over it. So, I guess you should eat your own words after Bristol, is the best I can tell you. Anyway, we're on to the racing news real quick because we've only got 11 minutes left. So, Denny Hamlin, I want to talk about this. He suggested an in-season tournament to attract fans. Of course, we know the ratings have been down at most races other than Chase's return. What he suggested was to have 32 drivers mid-season seeded in head-to-head matchups for 5 weeks. To create drama, to create entertainment, because these guys would be racing against each other hard to try to get, the win in this. And then the winner gets a huge payout and the playoff points. So I like this idea. I like it. I think, because the drivers don't want to, brew a rivalry, it seems like, I mean, Ross and Denny's been the big one, but I feel like, this will not only make them more competitive, but it'll stir the pot. And we have a dash for cash right now in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, okay? We have a dash for cash. We have the Triple Truck Challenge, or whatever you want to call it now. We've had that. Of course, we had the Winston, million back in the day, or whatever that was called. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I think bringing this in would create drama. And in fact, I would add to it that I think the winner of the tournament should be guaranteed a playoff spot. I think they should be guaranteed a 16th playoff spot. And then the 15 others have to win. That's what I would like to see. Okay, because, we guarantee the regular season champion a place in the playoffs, regardless of wins or any of that. I think we should guarantee the in-season tournament winner, not just playoff points, I think we should guarantee them a playoff spot. And say, hey, you get 7 playoff points for winning the tournament, and you get $4 million like he suggested, and then go from there. You're in the playoffs. Okay, I think you'll see teams like Rick Ware, like Front Row, JTG, of course we know they're in. I think you'll see even Spire. I think you'll see those teams really try to go after this. I think you'll really see them try to make this happen, to make a win happen, so that way they can put their team in the playoffs. Again, we'll see. I like this idea. I hope it goes through. I hope NASCAR listened to that Action Stendermental podcast and is considering it. Alex Bowman, he's out 3 to 4 weeks due to a spinal injury he sustained in dirt racing. Josh Berry, of course, filled in at Dover. Did pretty well, I believe. So, again, I gotta look it up, but I do believe he had a good race. He was running in the top 10, I know. And yes, he did get a top 10. Another strong run for Josh Berry in a fill-in role. And man, his name is circulating around the garage now as a guy who might be a contender. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I do want to talk about Alex Bowman. I hope he's okay. I heard 3 to 4 weeks, so that's good news that he's not going to be out that long. But we got to talk about driver safety at this point. We've really got to talk about it, because no doubt Alex Bowman is going to get a waiver. There's no doubt he will get a waiver and will make the playoffs if he wins a race. And I think that's the question that should be brought up after Chase, after the Chase Elliott thing. I think it needs to be brought to the forefront. So I guess first off, should drivers be able to participate in weeknight series? Should they be able to do extreme sports in general on their own time on the weekdays? I think so. I think they need that for their own sanity, because if they're trapped in a Chevy simulator, Toyota simulator, Ford simulator, whatever it is, if they're trapped in a simulator all week and they just don't get a chance to get out and actually do stuff on their own time, I feel like it would drive them insane. I think you'd see drivers retire sooner than they should. So I think you got to let them run these series if they want. I think you got to let them do the skiing and all that. But I'm under the impression that I think there should be a consequence if you get hurt doing this. Okay, you've got to let these drivers live their lives, but I think there should be a consequence for it. And I think it's, you can race in World of Outlaws. You can race sprint cars. You can race midgets. You can race, street stock, whatever you want to do. But understand, if you get hurt and are not medically cleared to race in a NASCAR sanctioned series because you got hurt in a non-sanctioned series, you will not get a playoff waiver. That's what I think the rule should be. If you are hurt in anything but NASCAR Xfinity, NASCAR Trucks, ARCA, Whelen, any of the lower NASCAR series, if it is not sanctioned by NASCAR and you get hurt driving or doing anything else, you do not get a playoff waiver. I think that should be the rule in 2024. And I think you'll start seeing drivers. I really think you'll start seeing drivers take it more carefully. They'll probably still go out. They'll probably still realize the risk. And I get this is counterproductive to the argument I made of they should be allowed to do it. But I'm saying they should be allowed to do it, but there should be a consequence for it. Okay, if you get injured like Kyle Busch did in that NASCAR Xfinity race at Daytona, if you get hurt like him in a big race and cannot race, you should get a waiver because you know what? You're on NASCAR's dime. Even though you're not racing in a series that you are racing for a championship in, you are racing in a NASCAR sanctioned series, and therefore you should get a waiver. Because sometimes there are sponsorship agreements that make them have to do this. So, again, if you get hurt in a NASCAR series, good, you get a waiver. I think in the future you can race these other races, you can do your extreme sports, but if you get hurt, you're not getting a playoff waiver. I think that should be the rule going forward. It'll upset drivers, I get it, but I think it'll make them err more on the side of caution in terms of that. Real quick, Josh Berry, he's rumored to have a full-time ride with the Cup team. I'm thinking it's Stewart-Haas. That's, to be honest, I think that's where he's going to end up. They don't really have anybody in the Ford development program that's ready to go to Cup yet, and I just don't see room at any of the Chevy or Toyota teams. So I think Josh Berry is going racing with Stewart-Haas Racing, and I think that's good for him. He's proving himself. He's really running well, and he definitely deserves to race on Sunday. So I hope we'll see him doing that very soon. And of course, it's rumored the deal is done. Like I said, I imagine it is Harvick's seat, but they're just not announcing it yet because it's 11 races in, and Harvick's still on his retirement tour, probably just out of respect for Harvick, and probably still trying to figure out sponsorship details. So again, I imagine it's going to be Harvick's seat because Toyota's, like I said, Chevy's stacked. Chevy already has their drivers ready to go, and then Ford needs help, with Harvick leaving, with Almirola potentially leaving, and then Toyota's got Sammy Smith, who's going to get called up eventually. So they're all set. Anyway, let's go on to our picks. Truck Series at Kansas. This is the first time I'm not picking Kyle Busch. I'm picking Ross Chastain to win the race. I think he'll get it done at Kansas. Then on the Cup side, 23-11 last year, so strong. Same with Toyota. I would be hard-pressed to believe that anybody but a Toyota will win. I'm going to go Bubba Wallace. I think he gets the job done and wins at Kansas. And Kurt Busch will be in the booth. That was his last career NASCAR Cup Series victory to date. So can't wait to see Kurt and hear him make his analysis on the race. We thank you for watching. Tune in to No Final Bell tomorrow afternoon. And then we will see you back here next Tuesday for Out of Turn 4. Till then, goodbye, everyone.